what a dominant chord is. It's that 5 chord that leads so seamlessly to the tonic. But what if I wanted to lead seamlessly somewhere else? This is Music Student 101. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Oh, it is a lovely day outside in Birmingham, Alabama.
Isn't it just, though?
It is 77 degrees.
Perfect.
The sky is blue, the birds are chirping.
Yes.
And yet
It's
here
nice.
we are.
And yet here we are in a basement.
In a basement, in the cave, because we want to bring the mysteries of music theory to your device.
Ooh, yeah. Is that what we're doing? Wow.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Get some cave music going. All right. Never mind.
You can just see the little trolls with their tools.
Yeah.
We have yet more theory to discuss today. We're going to talk about secondary dominants.
Yes, and this is a big one. This is an important one. This is sort of taking your first step into a larger world.
We already had a 45-minute discussion about this episode before we started to record it.
Yeah, and went down this whole rabbit hole that we're going to try to avoid.
I called it a chipmunk hole. Matt called it a rabbit hole.
Chipmunk hole, yeah. The end result being we were, ended up is there really even a such thing as a chord? And
Yeah.
all of this other crazy stuff that we're going to try to avoid in this podcast. So.
Yeah, I think I wanted to push a couple of topics that we can save for a little bit later on, but we are going to tease these topics for a little bit, right?
Yeah, we'll tease them a little bit.
But before we get into all that, it might be time to listen to some more, to have a little bit more listener mail. Listener mail.
What was that thing in Blue's Clues when they got mail?
Oh, I don't remember.
If I could have played that just now, that would have been perfect. Oh well.
Maybe future Matt can come back and re-record it.
That's always a possibility.
This is kind of cool. This is actually extraordinarily cool.
Okay.
We have a listener, Hugo Rinkvist.
Hugo Rinkvist.
From Stockholm, Sweden.
Nice.
So Hugo is an engineering student from Sweden with a love for music, he says. Hugo found our podcast via Google because he spontaneously wanted to improve his ear training and revise some theory with English music vocabulary.
Oh, very nice.
Uh-huh.
I apologize for my Southern American accent.
Oh, yeah. I've already apologized to that in the email, so I think we're covered here.
Good.
And to the rest of those in Sweden listening to us, and all over the world.
All right.
You want to read what he had to say?
Sure, I will. I just wanted to thank you guys for an excellent podcast. Oh, you're so welcome, Hugo. We love doing this. I've been singing in choir and playing the piano, done some small composing from now and then through my whole life, but while working and studying, it is hard to find time. Isn't that just the truth? It's hard for us to find time sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
We could be flying kites right now.
That's why your podcast is great, because you can enjoy it on the go. I have listened to about half of the episodes while performing manual repetitive tasks at my current workplace, and will for sure continue with the remaining. You manage to approach interesting topics in both a simple and advanced level while having a cheerful tone and giving many good music practicing tips. Keep up the good work, and not least those nice introduction themes.
Hey, I think that's our first compliment
on the introduction themes, which are all Jeremy, by the way.
Most of them.
There's been a couple where we played some of my stuff, and then there's been a couple that we recorded for the sake of it. But 90% of it is Jeremy, and he does a really great job of those.
Oh,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and it is always just so good to hear that we're having positive impact on people's music experience and their music knowledge experience. That is why we do this. That's why we're not out flying kites right now, because, we enjoy doing this, so.
And, Hugo and I had a little email exchange back and forth, and I was talking to him about some of the bands that I really dig out of Sweden,
Oh, okay.
And one of my top, if not my top band, is First Aid Kit. Are you familiar with them?
I don't guess I am.
It's these two sisters. They're like in their mid-early 20s, but their voices are so mature and so just immaculate. I mean, and they're sisters.
Right.
I think it's Joanna and Clara Soderberg.
Okay.
And when they harmonize together, it's just like, it's such beautiful music.
I will definitely have to check that out.
And Hugo brought up a good point, and I agree that when siblings harmonize, brothers and sisters, and I think because they have similar timbres in first place, right?
Yeah.
Biologically.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when brothers and sisters harmonize, it's some of the finer harmonies.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I found,
I wonder if there's a sense of being very familiar with your sibling's voice.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of it. Another band we all know from Sweden, ABBA.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
ABBA.
Of course. Yeah.
I actually saw an article in NPR today about how after 35 years, ABBA is now releasing 2 more tracks.
Oh yeah. Wow.
And dig this. They're not going to take it to the stage. They're going to send holographic avatars.
Okay.
Not unlike gorillas, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I would like to see that, actually.
I wondered if one day I could just send my holographic avatar to my Jasper Cole
So
shows.
are these just previously... Right. Record it beforehand and kind of...
I think I love live music too much.
I wonder if these are 2 just previously unreleased tracks, or if they went back and recorded new music, because I would wonder what kind of music they write after 35 years.
My understanding is it's new material.
That's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to hear that.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing more from Sweden and more from our good friend Hugo.
Indeed. Keep it coming. Another one, well, we have a 5-star rating now on Squibizzy.
Yeah, somebody named... I love these people who rate us.
From Squibizzy, okay. From Squibizzy.
Is it Squibizzy or Squibizzy? I don't know.
Squibizzy.
You say Squibizzy, I say
Squibizzy.
What does Squibizzy have to say?
He says, this podcast is very helpful, just I'm starting to need glasses. This podcast is very helpful, just learning terms and scales for me. I'm not a college student, but this is a great source of knowledge for someone who is self-taught as well. That's wonderful, because, in the beginning, we sort of thought that this would mainly be something for college students. Mm-hmm. Our audience has turned out to be a lot broader than that. So, we've kind of, not super consciously, but sort of going with the flow, have kind of, abandoned that initial idea that this is for college students only, and we're very glad to have that happen, and we're very glad to be a positive influence on people who are self-taught and who are studying music just for the joy of studying music, which is something I believe in passionately myself. Mm-hmm. So it's very good to hear this. It's very very helpful, and that gives us 5 ratings, all of which are 5-star ratings.
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5, yeah. I thought that, there must be like, that must be like 5 out of 20 stars or something. Okay, but no, it's 5 out of 5-star ratings. Thank you so much. We will continue to do our best to live up to that. To that rating.
And what this does is it actually, when you rate us on iTunes and other podcasting services, it puts us higher up in the search engines.
Which gives it, makes it more visible to more people, which...
So you're really helping us by making these ratings. And,
you're helping us, and you're helping all of those other people, too.
You're helping them find us.
Discover a good resource.
Yeah, and most people are pretty happy with what they found so far, it seems.
Seems like. Of course, the people who hate it probably just don't rate it. But
I know, right? Hey, if you hate us, rate us. If you hate it, rate it if you hate it.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with Jeremy on that. If you hate us, don't rate us.
Just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, just go on and find something.
Find a better podcast. Tell us about it.
Find a podcast you like better. And just don't add that negativity in your life where you gotta feel like you've got it. Oh yeah,
no one needs that.
Right.
We want honesty, but not negativity.
Right.
If you can find a way to do that. But anyways, I guess it's time to go ahead and move on into our topic of the day, right?
Let's get started. So far, when we have talked about chord progressions, we have talked about things that are largely diatonic, right? Meaning we are using notes from whatever major scale we're playing in to create chords. So just a quick example, if I'm in C minor, right, I have a C minor scale, And I'm going to use those notes to make chords. So if I'm a C minor, if I go to a 4 chord, this F minor, I use notes from that C minor scale, right? Yeah. And then, so more or less just using notes that are in the scale to create our chords. Mm-hmm. That's called diatonicism. The word diatonic tends to mean anything having to do with technically what's called a referential collection, but for our purposes, anything having to do with the major or minor scale you happen to be in.
And I think, to my knowledge, up until this point, everything harmonically we've been discussing has more or less been diatonic.
More or less, I would say.
We touched on the non-chord tones a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Melodically, we did with the non-chord tones, the passing tones and the neighbor tones and that stuff. And that's all sort of melodic considerations.
And keyword being melodic, right?
Right, yeah. So if I'm in a C minor chord and, that D was, outside of the chord, but still, but still understandable because it's a passing tone. And even then it was diatonic, right? So really just with like chromatic neighbor tones and stuff, with potentially, mostly it's been diatonic.
So when I think, when we're talking diatonic being all the notes in the scale itself of whatever key you're in, we also talked about, I have a quick question for you. Mm-hmm. Because we have discussed the harmonic minor and the melodic minor scales. Yeah. And these actually include some accidentals.
Sure they do, yeah.
Are these considered chromaticism or are they considered diatonic?
They are mostly considered diatonic. Uh-huh. Remember that, you're not necessarily ever going to play in G harmonic minor and just be stuck with that particular version of the minor scale. These minor scales are very fluid.
Yeah.
A piece of music that's in a minor key will, move to the harmonic minor version or the melodic minor version and move back, So generally, as long as you're in one of those versions, they are more or less considered diatonic. Even when we do things like when we're in C minor, and we go to a major 5 chord, that happens so often.
Yeah.
And that's from the harmonic minor.
Yeah.
Right? That happens so often that people will consider it diatonic. We won't think of that as a chromatic alteration of the scale. The one exception I could think of was if you built a chord on the raised 6th scale degree of the melodic minor scale, and so you were making a natural 6th chord. That would be something that we might be considered a chromatic alteration, a borrowed chord, actually. And that's because 6 tends to be kind of special because it has all these functions and things it can do with deceptive cadences and stuff like that. So barring that exception, we're still talking about diatonicism.
There's no such key as G harmonic minor. There's a G minor.
There's G minor.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're playing in G minor, you can use the harmonic minor, the melodic minor, the natural minor, fairly interchangeably. They're pretty fluid.
Right, so when we're talking about chromaticism, we're not talking about the harmonic and melodic minor. We're actually talking about harmonic chromaticism in this episode, right?
Sure, yeah. Now, this episode, we are going to move away from diatonicism legitimately and officially for the first time.
Yeah.
We're going to move into chromatic harmony. And this concept is very, very simple and probably very, very exciting for a lot of musicians. It just means using notes from outside of that scale. Mm-hmm. So bringing in some of those other notes to give it color.
Color.
Right? Yeah. The word chromaticism is from the Greek word chroma, meaning color. And they use this word as chromaticism was first starting to creep into music because they considered them colorations. Great controversial Renaissance figures like Monteverdi would refer to chromaticism as a coloration of the music to make it, to give it a little life and a little spice and to make it a little interesting.
Yeah. Whenever moments of chromaticism come up, I tend to get that feeling, I call it the Toto Effect. Take it away, maestro. And I'm not talking about Toto the band. I'm talking about, one of those days where it's just beautiful in your neighborhood, not unlike today. You're riding your bicycle down the street, maybe you got your little dog in your basket in the front of your bike, and all of a sudden maybe you take a wrong turn. Or perhaps some force acts upon you and you realize, all of a sudden, we realize that we're not in Kansas anymore.
We are not in Kansas anymore, yeah.
We are introducing some chromaticism.
Yep.
These secondary dominant state, or chromaticism actually has a few different functions, Sometimes it aids in voice leading tension.
It does. It aids in voice leading tension. It creates tendencies that will compel you toward certain chords, not just like the 5 is compelled to go to the 1, but other things can be compelled to go to other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes music more interesting.
Yeah.
Makes music more complex.
Maybe less predictable.
Less predictable. Less easy to analyze.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Thusly more engaging.
Yes. The main type of chromaticism we're going to talk about today is secondary dominance.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of a secondary dominant is to create a dominant leading to any chord whatsoever. Mm. So just as 5 wants to go to 1,
any diatonic chord whatsoever, or
any
chord. Okay.
Any chord was. I mean, we could say diatonic, but any chord whatsoever. So just as like if I'm in E flat, and then we have 5 that wants to go to 1. If we were in that 5, and that 5 would be B flat,
mm-hmm.
If we went to the dominant of B flat, which is F, that chord would seriously want to move up to B flat, which in turn is going to want to move back to E flat. Just as 2 wants to move to 5, to move to 1, that dominant of 5, what we called 5 of 5, wants to move to 5 and wants to move to 1. And the way we created that 5 of 5 was just basically making a 2. So like that last little chord progression I did in Rainbow was 2 to 5 to 1. It would have been just as possible, because that 2 is minor, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
E flat major.
Yeah, so that 2 was F minor.
It would have, yeah.
Yeah. So I just raised my A flat and made it A natural.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a 5 of 5. See how that worked?
Can I hear it one more time?
Yeah. So rather than 2 to 5 to 1, we're going to play 5 of 5 to 5. Come on, 5.
Okay, I hear the difference.
Yeah, adds a little more coloration.
Mm-hmm.
Adds more color. And it's like a secondary level of dominant. And we created that with chromaticism. Rather than playing the A flat, which is an E flat major, we played an A natural.
So a predominant function has actually become a secondary dominant function.
All right, well, the secondary dominant still has a predominant function.
Okay.
It's still moving to the dominant.
Precedes the dominant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But, you can make a secondary dominant for anything you want. You can have, there are 5 of 5 is the most common.
Mm-hmm.
There is also, are we getting into the most common yet?
Let's see here. Let's have a look at these notes real quick. While we're talking about the secondary dominants, let's give a brief example of the Roman numeral description.
Right.
If that's okay.
Sure.
So if we're looking at this on a piece of paper, what does it look like?
It looks like a 5 with a little slash and then a little 5 underneath the slash.
So a Roman numeral 5.
Roman numeral 5.
Roman numeral analysis.
Slash and then a 5.
Okay.
Meaning 5 of 5.
5 of 5.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Something that secondary dominants are great devices for tonicization.
Okay.
Which is, because that's what they're doing, right? That 5 has become a kind of 1. And so we've tonicized that.
The 5 wants to go to the 1.
Yes. The 5, and so 5 of 5 to 5 has sort of tonicized the 5. And that can affect a key change. You can sort of be in the key of B flat major at that point if you really, really want to. Mm-hmm. Right? Which is something we will get into later.
Modulations?
Yeah. Tonicization is a concept related to modulation, which is the change of key.
Yeah.
You know, how a song can change key in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And we will get to all of that later. Chromaticism as a concept kind of opens up those possibilities, you know. And not just moving to the relative major, which we've discussed before, but moving to lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Key changes versus gear shifts.
Yeah, key changes versus gear shifts. Exactly. Yeah. They are great vehicles for that. And secondary dominants are good for achieving the function of tonicization, which is, you know, when we go when we have 5 of 5, you know, we could be in the key of 5 now. Right, and
now we're on.
And now I'm in B flat.
Okay.
Right? So it creates. It's good for that.
Yeah.
It's good for that. But again, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
These are, you know, these chords are basically, we're altering the quality of these chords
Without leaving the key.
without leaving the key.
I guess that's the main difference between this and a modulation, right?
Right. Or this and a tonicization.
Okay.
Is, you know, on some level you never really leave the key. Mm. You know, you're just getting hung up in a weird area before you move on in the key. But these don't have to change the key. These are alterations within a key.
Right. And so if you're analyzing them, you're still kind of considering the same key. You're just
basically, yeah. And we'll talk about tonicization and modulation later.
Yeah.
And how things affect keys.
That's the rabbit hole we were talking about.
That's the rabbit hole, yeah. Let's not jump down that. Right now, yeah, we are just basically altering chords within the key chromatically to create a sort of secondary level of dominant. A secondary dominant,
yeah,
if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you make of this statement here, Matt?
Oh, okay.
Where there is a secondary dominant, there is a secondary leading tone. So
yes,
that has been altered.
So where there is a secondary dominant, there is a secondary leading tone. Mm. So when I did 5 of 5 to 5 and then to 1. What I did with that 5 of 5 was this tone, you know, is this A natural has become a leading tone up to B flat. You know, hear that?
Yeah.
So that is how we have done that, and that is the chromaticism. So while we're in E flat, we are just and that scale degree 4, we're raising it. So and then moving up to B flat from there.
That scale
and then back to 1.
That scale degree 4 that we just raised being the third of the 5 of 5 chord.
Right, being the third of the 5 of 5 chord, exactly.
Which resolves up.
It is a leading tone now. It's a half step up from that diatonic scale degree 5.
So in major, that's the main consideration when we're doing a 5 of 5. Mm-hmm. Now in minor, there's one other consideration.
There is one other consideration in minor, and that is the sort of the sharp 6.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if we were in a minor key, and I wanted to do a 5 of 5, you know, I am not only raising this scale degree 4 from right to get it to go to 5. I am also raising the scale degree 6 to make that 5 chord a major chord.
Right.
And this is the big thing about 5 of 5s is there are 2 chords, but they are major quality. We have adjusted these notes chromatically to make a 5 chord, to make a 2 chord a major quality chord, and then we call that 5 of 5, moving to 5.
Well, then let me ask you this. And so, if you're in a minor key, the minor 5, which is the diatonic chord,
Yes.
5 chord, we can't consider that to be a dominant function.
Oh, absolutely we can.
Oh, minor 5 can be a dominant function.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the minor quality chord.
The minor quality, yeah. You have to make it. You have to raise that 6 to make it a major.
To make it convincingly dominant function, yes. You know, function there can be gray area.
Yeah.
But it is generally accepted that this doesn't have the same kind of pull back to that 1 chord as right to once you go in here, you really kind of want to hear that 1 come back into the fold.
So for our purposes, a 5 of 5 would rarely be, if ever, a lowercase 5.
Never would it be.
To a 5.
Never would it be.
Okay.
The whole origin of the idea of 5 of 5 came from this. Well, we were in, and this has much more pull up to 1. So why can't we make major chords that have pulls up to other things? Like 5. So that was 5 of 5 to 5 to 1.
Okay. So it's that major quality it's that major third that resolves as leading tone up to the 1 of the following chord.
That makes it something that you can get away with calling 5 of 5.
The dominant function specifically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I find myself using these a good bit. I mean, a lot. It's used, I think, more often than people think in pop music.
More often than people think, yeah, because pop music doesn't necessarily care about remaining diatonic.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I want to use a D major chord here. And what you've created is a secondary dominant, whether or not you want to call it that, know to call it that, whatever. That's kind of what's gone on.
And then us analysts just have to deal with it.
And then us theorists just have to go, what the frick was going on there? And we come up with all these great terms like secondary dominant and dominant functioning chord, and
Well, I mean, do you think that covers the 5 of 5 pretty well?
I think we've pretty much done it, yeah.
What's another typical secondary dominant chord? That
some other typical secondary dominants, you will see a 5 of 4. And so let's be in a major key. Pick a major key, Jeremy.
Let's do D major.
Let's do D major. I love guitar players and bass players because they always pick sharp keys.
G and D.
Yeah, they always pick G and D and A, and I'm all about it. Horn players will say, let's be in G flat, and all right, so D major. And so just get our ears. If I want to make a 5 of 4, meaning a 5 going up to G, because we're in D major, right? I'm in luck. I need a D major chord, and I'm already on one.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, so. Yeah. This will often be, because it is also the tonic chord and has tonic function and has that stability inherent in it, we will often add a minor 7, to make it a major minor 7 chord, also known as a dominant 7. So you'll see 5, 7 of 4. So, and then I'm just going to drop that tonic down to make a minor 7. and then you can really hear how it wants to go to this G.
Right, because a 1 major minor 7 is not really a part of the diatonic.
Right, exactly, yeah.
It's going to be, in fact, if you wanted to add a 7 to the 1 chord, it's typically a major 7.
Right, yeah, and it's almost never done.
Uh-huh.
That's a 1 major 7 chord.
Yeah,
very and
pretty.
Notice this is still chromaticism, in a major key, because it would be C sharp diatonically, right? We've taken that C sharp, lowered it to make that dominant 7 chord, which wants to go so badly to 4. And then if we want, we can move that to 5/7 and get back to D.
Now here's a funny question some people might be asking themselves. Anytime I go from 1 to 4, am I not just going? Am I not doing a 5 of 4?
So this is not just 5 of 4. That's a good question. I have often remarked on the fact that 4 is just great at screwing stuff up.
That's right.
I've said that before.
It's a troublemaker chord.
It is a troublemaker chord.
For the theorist.
I don't know, I don't have a good reason for why, but anytime 4 is involved, yet it just screws stuff up. And the simple answer to your question is, it depends. It depends on context. If I'm just playing, if I'm just playing a blues progression, and I just went to 4, I wouldn't call that 5 of 4 going to 4. I would call that 1, 4. We sort of try to default to the simplest explanation.
Yeah.
If I had done that same thing, I went to 4, and then I'll been in 4 for a little while. Then I might have called that 5 of 4 at some point.
Because we stuck around in 4. But but that would have been a tonicization. Which we're not allowed to talk about until later. Right? Avoid the rabbit hole. Yes.
I would call that 1 unless I had a very good reason not to. And if it was a 1 dominant 7 chord, that would be a very good reason not to.
Yeah.
That would be a very good reason to say 5/7 of 4.
Right. When I hear that dominant 7 chord, that major minor 7 chord, I feel like a 5 is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in the midst of
a 5 is happening.
Dominant moment.
Yeah. And we're about to play that 5 chord. Yeah. So 5 of 5 and all of 5's variations. So 5/7 of 5. 5/6 of 5. 5/6/4 of 5. 5.
Inversions.
4/2 of 5. All of that stuff. Yeah. Which we have talked about before.
Yes.
All of that stuff. Fair game is considered a secondary dominant. Any kind of 5 of 5, or 5 of 4. Also a very common one. To get us into the key of 5 or the key of 4, are the 2 primary triads.
Yeah.
It's very, very easy to do that, and it's very satisfying to sort of briefly up the ante and increase that pull towards those chords.
Yeah.
Sharp 4 is the first chromatic note most people in music learn about for this reason.
Yeah.
Because it's the sharp 4 that makes... that will lead up to 5. That will make the 5 of 5.
As that pull we're talking about.
Has that pull.
So this is evident when I hear in a major key, I hear a 1 chord go to a 7 chord, like a major minor 7 chord.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that something's happening there, right?
Yeah. If you're... you hear something's happening, right? And then I could still, like I said, totally just still go, and be back in G, or be back in D rather. But that whole that major minor quality gave us a pull towards that 4 that we didn't necessarily have without it.
So we're not in Kansas. We're not in Oz. Maybe we're like
We're in the tornado.
No, we're in Nebraska or something like they dropped us off in Nebraska.
You dropped us off in Nebraska.
We're in the tornado. Ooh, that's even better.
Yeah, we're in the tornado. Yeah. So yeah, and that's what's fun about them is you can create this pull. This pull is what pulls music forward.
Right.
And so good music writers and good composers manipulate pulling you here and pulling you there and pulling you on to give their music a sense of it going somewhere, right?
And similarly to the example I brought up where in major a 1 turns into a dominant 7 chord, if you're in a minor key, well, if that 1 chord even becomes major.
Yeah, so if you're in D minor,
yeah.
you don't need the 7 as much necessarily.
Yeah.
To... 5-1.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. But you could still use it and it would still be awesome. I ought to go back and write down some of this stuff I make up while
it's all recorded. I'll send you the raw episodes.
Nice, good job.
Go through all the curse words and all the
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do that over again. What did you say again, Matt? What?
Send me the MIDI files and yeah. So yeah, in minor with that 5 of 4, you make that major 1 chord and it's going to want to pull towards that 4.
Yeah, that's kind of an obvious moment. Something's happened where you're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of went to lengths to make it very obvious, but the principle is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we could hear what's going on that way, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. You can actually sort of extend the feeling of a 1 chord this way by just if you play the 1 chord, think of it as a 5 of 4, but leave this 1 chord in the bass and make a 4 chord in second inversion.
Okay.
This would be a pedal 6/4 chord.
Yeah.
Right? So. And it kind of has the feel that we're still in sort of a tonic function kind of place, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of... until we move somewhere else.
Yeah.
But for that whole
this guy right here, he's gonna stay right there.
Sorry. Yeah. And then this is actually a 5 4-2 here. Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
Yeah. And so you've gotten that sense of, again, good music writers will, pull you back and forth, and then will at times choose not to pull you. It's like you got this underlying sense of stuck in a place, even though other things are moving.
Yeah.
Right? Because that bottom note never moves off a tonic.
Kind of anchors you there.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty neat, huh?
Very neat. Yeah. Especially in the minor key.
Especially in the minor key.
Because I'm such a fan of the minor key.
We all are. We all are.
So yeah, and that way it just kind of makes the tonic punch a bit more, kind of.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so in my studies, I've come across a couple of questions, a couple of statements that I found to be a little bit strange.
Okay, well, yeah, I may find them strange too.
You might. Or maybe you can help me make sense of them. Or maybe we just scratch them off the list altogether.
Or let's see what happens.
We will see. First question. Do inversions and, for example, the cadential 6/4 still apply if you're listening? I guess this is the whole labels versus harmonic function discussion we got into.
The whole labels versus harmonic. So, what is a cadential 6/4? Really?
Mm-hmm.
To recap, I'll be in C major here. C major.
Yeah.
if I do this and I play what appears to be a 1 in second inversion, and then move to 5. This is a cadential 6/4, right? Because we created, again, ostensibly 1 6/4, right? To 5, to 1.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But what happened there, really? Does this chord feel like a 1 to you?
Yes.
Does it?
Yeah.
So if I'm in a chord progression here, and
that did not feel like a 1.
see, so what did it feel like?
It felt like a 5.
Felt like a 5. And it should feel like a 5, because this is a 5 with 2 types of non-chord tones that we have talked about before.
Yes.
Specifically 2 suspensions.
Mm-hmm.
This E, moving down to D, a 6/5 suspension. And we talked about that in non-chord tones. We talked about that in counterpoint, too.
We did.
Yeah. And the other one, C, pulling down to B. 4/3 suspension. Again, talked about in counterpoint, talked about in non-chord tones. And both of those just happen to be happening at the same time. So it was always a 5 chord.
Okay.
It just had a couple of non-chord tones that we resolved.
There we go. So if I'm listening to this and I'm taking an exam and I put this down as a 1 6/4 chord,
I would mark it wrong.
oh, big old red mark.
Yeah. So and to play that chord progression again that I was playing, or something like it anyway.
Yeah.
Sounds much more satisfying, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure what the question was originally. I kind of got off on a tear here, but
I guess ultimately when you think you're hearing a cadential 6/4 of 5, you're hearing a 5 of 5.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Anything that's a cadential 6/4 is 5 in whatever key that is.
Okay.
And if you make 1 6/4 to 5 of 1 6/4 of 5 to 5 of 5 to 5, at that point you're essentially in the key of 5. I would go back and say, okay, maybe I've made a mistake about what key I think I'm in here.
Yeah, what something appears to be and what something's function is might not always be the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you can slap labels on stuff like, hey, 1 6/4. But does it function like 1? Is that label really the best label you can throw on it?
In this case, it seems not.
In this case, it seems not, at least in my opinion. Now, this is very controversial, of course.
Yeah.
And it creates a certain amount of cognitive dissonance when you say, well, this is all the notes out of my 1 chord. Why is this not a 1 chord?
Yeah.
Well, it has to do with what those notes are doing.
Yeah.
And that's what got us all into the whole rabbit hole before we started recording. So,
Great, man. Another question.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about voice leading and the rules and the many rules that go with voice leading.
Mm-hmm.
Do these principles still apply when you're trying to write good harmonies and progressions using the 5 of 5 chord?
Absolutely.
Man.
They always apply. No parallel fifths, no parallel octaves.
Uh-huh.
Don't double the third of a chord unless it's a first inversion chord, and then you can kind of get away with it. All of that stuff we've talked about before. Absolutely, they do still apply.
Is there anything new that we need to keep in mind other than anything new from the original voice leading rules that we need to keep in mind?
Not new exactly. Remember your tendency tones. Remember that scale degree sharp 4 is going to want to resolve up to scale degree 5, especially if it's in the context of a secondary dominant.
Uh-huh.
If you make a 1 major minor 7 chord and that's a 5/7 of 4 chord, that lowered scale degree 7 is going to want to resolve downward you know, into the sixth that is the third of the 4 chord. That, you know, so 4/3 suspensions are still a thing. Leading tones resolving upward are still a thing. That's not a new concept, but it is sort of being applied in a new way. So keep those in mind. Otherwise, nothing super new.
Very cool. Here's a fun one for me. Now, what happens if we use the 5/5 for a half cadence?
Well,
can we call it a quarter cadence?
A quarter cadence.
I'm gonna fit that one in somewhere.
Believe it or not, you know, if you like study Mozart's music and Beethoven's and those guys, 5/5 is a really useful chord for those guys to make you feel like you're in the key of the dominant. Which, you know, if you study sonata form, and presumably we'll talk about sonata form one day.
Yeah.
If you studied that, you know that moving to the key of the dominant is a big deal.
Right.
So 5/5 is a great way to sort of help you get there, because when it's voiced the right way, it really can make that 5 sound like the key. Right?
Okay. So maybe a movement would end on the 5/5. The next movement would come in.
Yeah.
Or the next passage, or
right, or the transition portion of the exposition would end on 5/5, you know, and would so if we're going, and I'll do something nice and Mozart-y. I don't know how Mozart-y that is, but yeah,
that sounds very Mozart-y.
Yeah, and then we ended up going to 5/5. Come on, man. You know, and then and now I'm in G. Right?
Okay.
You see how that works and how we use that 5/5 to tonicize 5 and end up in that new key?
Yeah, in my head, I wasn't sure if we were actually back at the tonic or if we actually had tonicized a different chord.
And that is Mozart's genius.
Yeah, okay.
Well, he wasn't the first one to do that, but you get the point. And you know, this is how these things can sort of manipulate you, you know, in interesting ways. So that can happen. In other contexts, I would question if you see something going 5/5, 5, 5/5, 5, 5/5, 5, and then ending on 5/5. I would ask if you actually heard 5/1, 5/1, 5/1, 5 half cadence. You know, so yeah, they can be used as a half cadence. It just depending on the context. Always be careful of what key you think you're in. You know, and again, this can be discussed when we actually talk about key changes, which obviously is a subject coming up.
Yeah, modulations.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about them now, right?
So, yeah, we teased it too much.
Teased it way too much, more than we wanted to.
Yeah, right. Okay, so but no quarter cadence.
No quarter cadence, not really. Not really. I mean, cadences are so tied to key, you know, that if you think you heard a quarter cadence, you probably what you've heard is a new key, and you're hearing a half cadence in that.
Right.
The 5/5 as a chord is usually just meant to pull to 5. It's a chord of predominant function.
And just to clarify, I'm having a bit of fun. I don't think there actually has ever been such thing as a quarter cadence.
No.
Another chipmunk hole, rabbit hole that I'm putting us down.
What's the difference in a chipmunk hole and a rabbit hole? Chipmunk hole is smaller?
I think it's smaller.
Okay, it's smaller, shallower.
It's not as daunting, I don't think, as a rabbit hole.
I still like the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole versus Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole.
This is a little more Tim Burton-y, I guess.
This is a little more Tim Burton-y, okay.
Here's another statement I ran into that I couldn't quite piece together.
Okay.
Chordal chromaticism usually results from a linear elaboration of a diatonic framework.
Oh, yes.
That sounded very textbooky.
That was straight out of a theory text,
It
wasn't
was.
it? I bet I could even guess which one if I really wanted to.
You probably could.
How I interpret that statement is that what we're doing here is not going crazy, right? We're not just slinging chromaticism and all over the place. We are outlining a diatonic framework. So 151 is a diatonic framework. If I want to use chromaticism to sort of linearly elaborate that, I can put in that sharp 4. So instead of going, I went, right? Right? And what it is a linear elaboration. It's 5/5s and 5/4s don't really exist by themselves without that diatonic framework, without that 5 to go to, without that 4 to go to. So the diatonicism is still key in what we call chordal chromaticism, which is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, okay.
So that diatonic, that I'm in the key of this, is still the main skeleton of our piece of music. This is just a way to elaborate it and to color it.
Ah, okay. So much like we were saying earlier about the extension of the 1 chord.
Yeah, right, exactly. As in the extension of the 1 chord.
Elaboration, extension, similar concept.
Prolongation.
Prolongation.
Yeah, even that Mozart example where we ended up in 5, it kind of still feels like we're going to want to hear that 1, right? A little bit later.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about sonata form, you know that we will get that 1 a little bit later, right?
And you will know something about sonata form very soon.
And you will soon. We have so much stuff to make podcasts on.
Let's do this, man. Since we're getting it up to about an hour.
Okay.
Let's just have a harmonic progression episode, part 5 or whatever, where we're talking about the 5 and 4, the 5 of 5, 5 of 4 chord.
And rather than quizzing you on it now?
Yeah, and then we'll recap on that a little bit in the episode, and then we'll spend more time quizzing me. And we could even do 3 chords or something like that. Not 3 chords, but like 5 of 5, 5 of 4, 5 of...
I'd love that. And then sort of follow the basic ear training progression, because at some point in like ear training 3-ish, you do introduce secondary dominants.
Okay. So we just had enough theory talk about it, so
the recap...
As so many of our listeners seem to enjoy.
And if you enjoy it, we'll keep doing it. So, feel free to listen to the last 5 minutes of this podcast.
Oh, hey, Matt, dig this, man. In the last episode, transposition, we didn't do a recap.
Oh, did we get a giant,
no, because
bombs lobbed at us?
No,
okay.
I came in after the fact, and future Jeremy came in from his editing time machine, and I played this little kind of chord to bring me in. Can you guess what kind of flashback chord I might have used to bring me future Jeremy into the episode?
I can't even imagine.
It's that strange chord.
Oh, the whole tone scale?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Augmented. It was just an augmented arpeggio, but yeah.
Well, that's a subset.
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Very good.
But anyway,
I can't believe we forgot to do a recap. What the heck is wrong?
If I don't put it in my notes, it doesn't happen.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I feel you. Sometimes when I do put it in my notes, it still doesn't happen.
Yeah, right.
If it's not there, it's definitely. Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and recap this episode, having said all that.
All right.
So first off, we kind of discussed what diatonic chords are, as we had before.
We discussed what diatonic chords are, which are just chords using notes that are found in the scale you're playing in.
More or less strictly from that scale, right?
More or less strictly from that scale, yeah.
With the exception of the harmonic and the melodic minor.
Right, yeah, which we don't consider to be outside that scale because those minor scale versions are sort of fluid.
And also because they're melodic, they're more concerning the melodic content rather than the harmonic content. Does that bear any difference?
No, they have a pretty good influence on the harmonic content, so...
Right. Never mind that, scratch that. Okay. And then we decided it was time to broach a little bit of chromaticism.
Yeah, so we're stepping out into the world of chromaticism, playing notes outside of that key.
And outside of the non-chord tones that we discussed
And
earlier.
outside of the non-chord tones we discussed, which are primarily melodic considerations, right? And we're going to dip a toe into this, basically. We're not just going to go crazy at first. The sort of first chromatic chord we're really going to talk about is raising the 4th scale degree, which creates a chord called a 5 of 5, a dominant chord of the dominant chord. So this 5 of 5 wants to pull to 5 the way 5 wants to pull to 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in practice, this took what was our 2 chord that moves to 5 to 1. It took that minor 2 chord in a major key, scale degree 4, raise it to make A natural, and it made it a major chord.
Yeah.
This still wants to move to 5. This still wants to move to 1.
Yeah. It just wanted to move a little more. It just had a little more tension.
Yeah. So we chromatically altered that one note, created a major chord, that we called 5 of 5. A 5 moving to the 5, which then moves to the 1.
And that is chromatic harmony.
That is chromatic harmony. Yes, sir.
Very cool, man.
Mm-hmm. And then some other things we talked about in a little consideration. In a minor key, we would not only have to raise that scale degree 4, but we would have to raise that scale degree 6. Because, 2 being diminished in a minor key, you're just going to have to raise 2 notes instead of just 1 note to make a major chord.
Yeah.
But a 5 of something, a secondary dominant, is always going to be a major chord.
Ooh, can we hear a minor 1, 2, 5 versus a minor 1, 5 of 5?
Okay,
5?
Yeah. So minor key.
There's 1.
Yeah, and so we're going to have 1. And then we're going to move to 2 diminished. Yeah. And we're going to move from 2 diminished to 5, if I can get there. Yeah. And then move from that back to 1. And now we're going to have 1. And we are going to move to 5 of 5. Which is then going to move to 5. It's going to move to 1. With a little 4/3 suspension, just to
Color
brighten your day.
Add a little chroma to it.
So yeah, the main takeaway being a 5 of 5 is always going to be a major chord, and you can also include all of the 5s. 5, 5/7. 5/6, 5/6/4, 5/4/3, 5/4/2.
All the inversions.
Yeah, all of that, all of that good stuff.
All the 7th chords.
So there's a 5/7 of 5, and 5/6 of 5, and all of that good stuff.
And we're going to give this a better listen and better analysis because we're going to do a harmonic progressions episode on the secondary dominants.
Yeah, and I'll quiz Jeremy on how well he understands the difference between 2 and 5 of 5.
And I will study like hell before that episode. I'm going to put my ears. I'm going to get on Musical U.
That's a good plan.
I'm going to get on Musical U, and my buddy Chris Sutton's going to help me all through it.
That's a good plan.
All right, man. Okay, so
there was that. And then we talked about some other secondary dominants, because you can make a 5 of whatever you want.
5 of 3?
Yeah, 5 of 3, 5 of 6, totally happens.
Yeah.
And then 5 of 7, totally happens. 7 of 7 happens more, but whatever. 5 of 4 is actually a fairly common one.
Huh?
And that has the added bonus of just being a 1 chord, right? So I'm in 1 chord, and then just thinking of that as a 5 of 4, move to 4.
Yeah.
This is made a little more convincing by adding a minor 7 to our 1 chord to make it a 5/7 of 5. So it makes it less. That sort of makes it less a question of, well, is this 1 or is this 5 of 4? Because once you add that, it's definitely 5/7 of 4. Right? That 7 added an extra pull to want to go to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to work a little harder in the minor key for that effect, right?
Yes. You have to. In the minor key, it's a little bit easier, just because you can make that 1 chord major
Yeah.
You know, but even in the minor key, making it major and making it a dominant 7 chord. Still is going to greatly improve that effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Making any 5 into a 5/7 just increases that strength of that pull, wanting it to resolve to a tonic, whatever its particular tonic may be.
It kind of more seals the tonicization of the following chord.
Yeah, it makes it really strongly pulling towards that chord, because you no longer just have a leading tone. You have a leading tone, and then you have what is a 4 wanting to move to a 3.
And speaking of leading tones, where there's a secondary dominant, there is a secondary leading tone.
There is a secondary leading tone. The way this
that's
works,
the sharp 4 we were talking about, right?
Yeah. The way this works is you're creating a leading tone to a new note, a leading tone to a note that is not the tonic, and then just harmonizing around that.
So if you're listening for these 5/5 chords and you hear a leading tone occurring, but you're pretty sure it's not the leading tone of the key, there's a good chance that this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary
Very good
dominant.
Chance.
Mm-hmm. So we covered 5/5 and 5/4, didn't we?
Covered 5/5 and 5/4.
And those are the main things, other than a little bit of this, that, and the other.
Yep.
What else can be said? I mean, I guess we can. You want to real quick just go over the questions I asked real quick?
Sure.
Even though we just did it.
Sure.
But it is a recap.
It is a recap.
Okay. And then I just had a few more little questions. I mean, I was asking about the cadential 6/4.
Yeah.
That's not a 1/6/4.
It's not really a 1/6/4.
That's a 5.
Yeah. So in case you were wondering if you could use, I don't really know how that fits into the context of what we were talking about, but yeah, it's not really a 1/6/4. It's really a 5.
Just trying to be able to determine the differences between what we see and what we're seeing and what is functioning.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that would be a great podcast to have sometime. Just one of our sort of lighthearted. Discussions about the deeper meanings of music theory.
Yeah,
it gets deep, guys.
The rabbit hole.
It gets deep.
The rabbit hole becomes the bear cave.
Ooh, you have no idea.
A Tim Burton bear cave. Okay, and then I was asking about the voice leading principles. They all seem to still apply.
The voice leading principles all still apply. No parallel fifths, no parallel octaves. All of that good stuff is still a thing. With the maybe moderately additional concern of paying attention to your tendency tones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you create a leading tone leading to a 5, make sure that it's kind of got to go to 5.
Oh.
You know, and when you're creating a 5/7 of 5, that is going to have that 7 that's going to need to resolve down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we're using those in sort of different ways to harmonize different chords and different notes now. It's the same consideration that we've talked about before. It's just kind of thinking about it in new places.
So when composing and using secondary dominants, you would have to use the same voice leading considerations as you were if you were composing for dominants.
Absolutely.
Very cool. And then I think I was asking about my old friend, the quarter cadence, which is non-existent.
Yeah, can something be ended on 5/5 and called it a half cadence?
Right.
And the answer to that was a big, huge. It depends. In general, I would say that if you ended on a 5/5 and felt like you heard a half cadence, then you probably changed key back there somewhere. Yeah, 2/5 and ended on, a half cadence.
You may have modulated to that 5.
You may have modulated to that 5. Probably did.
Yeah.
If it feels that much like a half cadence, you probably did.
And modulations are coming right up.
And modulations are coming right up.
And I'm not going to worry about this last question.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Okay, so there's our recap, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Secondary dominants.
Secondary dominants. You have taken your first step into a larger world.
Into our foray into chromaticism.
Indeed.
And the very colorizations that come from it.
Can't wait.
You're rubbing your hands
Rubbing
together.
my hands evilly, villainously, yeah.
You can't wait to get me all confused. To look at that little blank stare on my face. That fortunately our listeners can't hear. All right, well, we'll catch you on the next one, guys. Soon come modulations, form and analysis, all kinds of good stuff that's going to help us further understand this topic.
Stay tuned.
Thanks for listening. More on secondary dominants to come. Check the homepage of our website, musicstudent101.com, for news and updates. As always, you can reach us at info@musicstudent101.com. We'll be listening.